Can we predict where you're going to be next week, next month, next year based upon where you are on this curve? And the answer is kind of. But it's not one data point. It's if you can see multiple data points, you can predict where that kid will be in the future. So here's a way to make that really obvious and logical for you. We're getting rid of the normal curve, and we're going to go to Snow Hill that looks like a normal curve. I'm going to come into your school, and I'm going to pick a student at random. I'm just going to close my eyes and pick someone out of your roll book. The kid that I select is probably going to be in this area because there are way more of them. So let's just say this is the average kid. Now, I don't know exactly how to say this for you in your school, but I'll tell you how I say this to other schools. So what if this was a little kid on their first day of school? And we really want them to be successful. So on the first day of school, I need to do something about that kid. That kid is here represented by a snowball. If that kid is successful, the snowball's going to move this way. If they're not, the snowball will move this way. What do we know about snowballs when they're rolling downhill? They get bigger and heavier, which makes them roll faster. There's a Newton's law in there somewhere. So, here's this kid. He or she is a snowball. And on the first day of school, I come in and say, meet you at the door. Glad you're here. Great, great, great that you're here this year. Did you know that we walk in the hall here? That's what we do to make sure that we're respectful and responsible. Come on with me. Wow, you are a fantastic walker. Great job. I'm really impressed by your walking. I'm going to remember you because you're a great walker, and I'm going to need you to show everybody. Now, this kid on the first day is thinking, damn, I never even thought I could walk, but I can. And that's all we needed to make that snowball roll to the right. And here's what we know. Every single time a person is successful with anything we ask them to do in the school, anything, it statistically increases the probability of another one. Every success is a predictor for another success. Just think of this logic. I'm coming to your school tomorrow. I want to watch one of your students be successful with everything they do all day. If the person I watch is successful with everything they do all day, every one of you gets a $10,000 bonus. Can I pick the kid, or do you want to pick them? You do it. Because which one are you going to pick? He's had 10 successes this year. What's the probability number 11 will be tomorrow? I don't know. He's had 40 successes this year. What's the probability number 41 will be tomorrow? I don't know, but it's greater than his probability. He's had 1,000 successes. And you can see, the more success you have, the more predictable it is you'll have another one. And the bigger it gets, when you get to 1,000, it's really big. And that's what happens. We have to, as educators, create success for the students we have. If we continue to create success, what will happen is that snowball will get so big and so heavy and roll so fast that it can't be stopped. And that's what we want. Kids roll right out of the school and be independent and successful without us. Success creates independence. But success has to create success enough times to make independence. So what we get down here are kids that don't need us anymore. That's what we want. It's the same thing happened to all of you. At some point in your life, somebody taught you to read. Now, I bet when you get up in the morning, you read the newspaper or your phone every day, and nobody ever says to you, good reading, good job sounding out that word. Because you don't need it anymore. You did. When you were up here and you had very little success, somebody needed to tell you about every little success to keep you going. But once you got it and that snowball started rolling, people said that less and less and less to the point where they don't say it at all. What makes your snowball keep rolling? Success. That's what we have to build with our students. How do you build enough success that they don't need us to build success? Well, that's not an easy thing to do, but it's a lot easier to do if we're starting here than if we're starting down here. And this is the way I see this happen in a lot of the schools where I work, is that people will say, you know what? The kids in this school are old enough and should know better than running in the hall. I'm not going to teach them to walk in the hall. That's ridiculous. But if I see them running, I'll teach them a lesson. Okay, that's one way we can do it. So here's what happens on the first day of school. He's really excited to be here. He comes running through the door, running down the hall, and I stop him. Whoa! We do not run in the hall here. We walk in the hall. I'm going to be watching you this year because you look better. And what we got on day one is a snowball rolling the wrong way. And here's a problem. That snowball's prediction for the future is going that way. Just like success predicts success, failure predicts failure. If I were saying...
Sorry, speaking of failure, I failed to turn on your lapel mic. Can you
Please start over.
You start over?
let me get that. He's right, so... But can you find something positive that I did today?
Snowball's rolling alongside the hill.
This is all part of an orchestrated plan that we have.
Right?
So I'm coming to your school tomorrow. I want to see a kid have a problem. If I see a kid have a problem, you all get $10,000. Right now, you're all thinking of the same kid. If you work in the average school, there are 2 or 3 kids that are on everybody's mind constantly. And if I said, "Here's the problem," that's the kid that pops up. It's predictable. The more times a kid has failures, the more they will have. Every failure that a kid has in a school statistically increases the probability of another failure. Just like success. So what happens if you get success and failure one-on-one all day long? You don't go anywhere. We have to have more success than failure to predict this snowball will continue to move. Here's what we know. For the average person, and this is average and it's general and we don't know a whole lot about it, but for the average person, it takes about 4 successes for every failure to keep a snowball rolling that way. By the time they get down here, it's the same thing, but those successes come naturally. You don't have to make those successes. But these are the kids, here and down are the kids that I work with. The data we have right now says, if you want to change this kid, first of all, you have to stop that snowball from rolling. And this is the hard part that people don't think about. You also have to roll that snowball back up the hill before you can push it over the other side. The data we have says it will take 14 to 1 to move that snowball back up a hill. What that means is, the longer we wait before we do something to change behavior, the harder it will be, the less likely it'll work. Honestly, when we get kids down here, the bottom 2% behavior-wise, in my field, we talk about treating those kids like they have diabetes. And what that means is, you aren't going to fix it. You've got to teach them how to deal with it for the rest of their life, because it's not going away. Now that's sad that we have kids down here, but we do. What's really sad is that if we would have intervened up here, a lot of those kids wouldn't have rolled that far in the first place. But we're not good at fixing that group of kids. And if this is reading or math, it's as difficult. Now, I'm not saying we can't fix it, because we can. I'm just saying the probability is much lower and the effort is much higher on our part. So, everything we're going to talk about for the rest of our time together is gambling. It's probability. What's the chances that this would work? So I'm going to give it back to you as a gamble on everything. If I said to you, you'd get $10,000 if that student did that tomorrow, what would you want to see happen? You'd say, well, if there's 10 grand on it, I'm going to take a day off and I'm going to follow that kid. Well, there's really not 10 grand on it. So what would you like to see the other adults doing? Where would you like to see them standing? What should they say? What kinds of things do we need set up? Which kids should not be together? There are all these things we can play with that are probabilities. Nothing is a sure thing. Nothing works with every student. Nothing works every time. But some things give you a better chance than others. It's very simple, and we have the data. What we're looking for are On a daily basis, while I work with students to teach whatever I teach, what are the things I could do during that instruction that would make those snowballs move the farthest and be most likely to make them move at all? Those are what we call a variety of things. High leverage practices, effective practices. One of the things that I don't like it being called are research-based practices, because I hate that term. It doesn't mean anything. All we've done in education is we've said, anybody who crosses this finish line here gets to be called an evidence-based practice. Okay, or a research-based practice. Well, what if 50 things cross that line? Are they all equal? Probably not, but we pretend like they are. I always think of it like this. What if I said, I set up a bunch of cones all around your school. It runs a 10K race. When I say go, I want you all to go out and start running. Anybody who makes it back here before 2 o'clock is an evidence-based runner. So you all take off. And some of you are back here in an hour. And some of you are back here in 2 hours, and some 3, and I think some of you went to lunch and then came back. But if you got here before 2, you're in. And we shut the door, and there are people out there trying to get in and say, no, you're not evidence-based runners. The rest of you are. Tomorrow morning, a guy comes in here and he says to me, I'm running a relay race with $1 million first prize. I need one more runner. Who do you got for me? And I said, pick any of them. They're all evidence-based. You are, but only because I drew an arbitrary line in the sand, and 2, some of you are better than others. So I'm not so concerned with research-based as I am with, among those things that we think are research-based, which ones give us the best chance and the biggest effect. We can find those. The research is done. It's been done for us for a long time. Here's how we do that. This curve represents every kid in the universe, every student in the universe. Here's the question. Given that we use intervention A, how far would the average kid move on that curve? Given that we used intervention A and B, but not C, we can look at that and say, what's the average movement? When we talk about average movement, it's something called an effect size. That's all effect size means is, how much movement do you get for the average person getting this? And an effect size is measured by standard deviations. An effect size of 1 means the average person getting that intervention moved 1 standard deviation, which is huge. Because in the real world, here's what we know. Measure a student in 1 year. Measure now, measure 1 year later. The average student moves about 40% of a standard deviation, or an effect size of 0.4 in 1 year. Here's why that's important. If you know a kid's going to grow that much by being alive for a year, any intervention you use that has an effect of less than that will be invisible. No one will ever know you used it. You're wasting your time by putting in an intervention that's going to give you less of an effect than you did by just simple maturation. That's the important concept.